two radio talk show hosts that run a self-help talk show called The Pursuit of Happiness were found dead in their shared New York home on Monday. Their names were Lynne Rosen and John Littig. Apparently they had committed suicide an entire week prior by putting bags over their heads and breathing helium until they were dead. Authorities didn't find them until a week after this suicide. So these are two people who do a call-in show about the pursuit of happiness. One of them's a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, I think. Psychotherapist, frequently encouraging her callers to accept changes in their lives, try spontaneous activities, and they took their own lives.
Yeah, so obviously it's sad because they're dead, but obviously there's a bit of irony here, right?
There is irony here, but maybe we look at this in a reasonable way. Perhaps these people were trying,
in an unreasonable way.
Perhaps, like many people with this kind of cult of false positivity in American culture. There's this great book by Barbara Ehrenreich called Bright-Sided, How the Power Positive Thinking Movement is Destroying America. And I think an important point that she makes in this book is that kind of falsely trying to force happiness in places where it doesn't belong doesn't allow you to get at the root of some of your issues. And ultimately, I think feigning like we're always in a great place and not actually dealing with the things that are bothering us can lead to tragic consequences.
So there's the whole whiteboard movement or something we were talking about earlier in the day unconnected to this story about like, oh, you put something positive on the board.
Oh, and like a dream board, like Oprah?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so I'm conflicted about that. Because on the one side, I really think that if you state what your goals are and you tell people, and this is what I'm going to do, you're much more likely to do it. I really believe that, right? On the other hand, you can't, as Cara's pointing out here, you can't feign it like, I'm happy all the time. And I'll tell you what, golly gee, I'm going to get this goal. I'm going to have a Cadillac by tomorrow. No, you're not, schmuck. Just calm down. Like, you work really hard, and maybe you'll get a Cadillac one day. And if you just put it on a goddamn whiteboard and go back to sleep, you're not going to get it, right?
Well, and that's the thing too. These goals have to be reasonable for you to accomplish, because if they're unreasonable and you put so much pressure on yourself and you're so open about it, you tell everybody in your life, you struggle for it, and then you don't achieve that goal, it can actually have the opposite consequence.
Okay, so here's two things. First thing is, don't set reasonable goals. Don't do it, because you're only constrained by the size of your brain, and once your brain expands, it never regains its former shape. So think big, because somebody else is doing big things, so why not you?
I call total bullshit on that commentary.
No, I want Jimmy on that. Really? You think set just like modest goals?
So do you think when Cenk started his show, he's like, yeah, we'll probably do a show nobody will ever watch, and that's what I'm going to devote my life to?
Why does that have to be his reasonable goal? Jesus Christ. I think it's quite reasonable to say, I'm a talented individual who's interested in these stories, and if I make a show on the internet, hopefully people will watch it.
So no, I'm with Jimmy. And let's use this example for a second. Here's what I mean by that, Cara. It is totally unreasonable to say, I will do a show where I give people my opinions and everybody will watch it.
Yes.
Like, what the hell?
Okay,
what,
first of all,
nuts? Why would anybody watch you?
No offense, but everybody does not watch this show.
Okay.
Lots of people watch the show, but everybody does not. And
right,
to say,
but what would have been unreasonable is to say, of course not everybody watches that show. Of course! No, what would have been unreasonable to say is, I will do this show and my opinions will be so great and fun, etc., and my friends will be so lovely and delightful as we all do it together that we'll get 1 billion views. It was the most unreasonable thing in the world to say that. But it doesn't mean that you say, I'm going to get 1 billion and take a nap, like I said, and go grab a sandwich.
That also wasn't, like, when you first set out to have this goal, right? You didn't say, you might have said, I hope that in the distant future, I get to a place where I can get 1 billion views. But for right now, my goal is going to be to hire some producers, to get a set, to do all of these things. You actually set achievable goals for yourself.
Both.
And
This is a great
towards
conversation. Because it's true. It's both. So I had the micro goal of, hey, look, man, today we got to get interns. This freaking Jesus kid showed up. He's like, I don't know. He seems kind of like a deadbeat, but he figured out the board and he can make things work. We'll get him. So that was my goal for that day, so that we can get the show on the air, right? But anytime anybody asked, especially in interviews, I said, our goal is to dominate media.
Yeah.
And when we had nothing, and people are and I say, all right, no, but I got it on a board, so I'll see your ass when I get there, right? And so it's a mix. It's a mix. If you only do the macro and you don't do the micro, you're a loser, and you're never going to get anywhere.
At the same time,
I don't want to be harsh.
Yes,
right.
But at the same time, you're somebody
right.
coming from a place where you actually were successful in that. You are one of the few who was able to achieve something like this.
Because he thought big.
No. To say that anybody who thinks big is to fall in that American exceptionalism bullshit view that causes so many people to take their own lives. I think that there's a really good example of this. I did, back when I was at Huffington Post, I did a story about the power of positive thinking, and I talked to an oncology physician, and he talked about how much pressure people with terminal cancer have on them to constantly stay positive and to say, I'm going to make this, I'm going to beat the cancer, even though the odds were grossly not in their favor. And how negative that actually had an impact on them to always want to stay positive for their families, to always want to pretend like they were in a good mood. Okay. And he found that the measures of satisfaction of their lives in those last few months and years, when they could just be honest with themselves and say, fuck this cancer, today sucks and I want to talk about it, was so much better for them.
Now, Cara, I got to make 2 points about that. Okay, so number one is, look, you can't be unrealistic. You can't say unrealistic in the sense of things you cannot do. I cannot be an NBA star.
I will never be Kim Kardashian because she's an heiress. That's why she, or Paris Hilton. Yeah, because she is an heiress.
So if I was I'm really positive thinking, I think I'm going to fly, no, you're going to crash, you're going to die. Okay, if you jump off the building, you're going to die. Don't do that, right? And so if I had cancer like that, my guess is I'd be like, oh, that sucks, I guess I'm going to die. Yeah. I'll do my best. But the science is science, right? If I get lucky, maybe the doctors, work this thing out.
Sure.
And if I don't, I'm going to keep a positive mood, I'm going to enjoy every day I've got. But it is what it is. Now, on the other hand, American exceptionalism, I'm a huge patriotic dork. And I believe in it. Okay. And I don't believe in the American exceptionalism of the neocons who are like, oh, we're exceptional, so we don't have have to have morality. Right. We don't have to follow the rules.
We're exceptional because God made us that way.
And
that
that's
kind
insanity,
of a thing. Yeah.
Right? But I believe that that we can have a society where we give equality of opportunity, not results, but opportunity to people, and then people can shine, and then they can have a chance to have their own whiteboard and then work their way up to it every single day, build it, etc. It's not an accident that we have the American flag in the Young Turks song.
And I believe we could have that society, but I don't believe we do have that society. That's the unfortunate thing. I don't believe in the rags to riches story. I think that the very few, the 1% who tell that story, are not representative of the millions and millions of kids in this country who are born into impoverished neighborhoods who don't have the same chances as those who are more well off.
Can I say?
Yeah. I'm trying to say something else. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, so there's two. Well, so I mean, I think what you're saying is also correct. You have to set attainable goals, but you also have to have a huge goal. You have to have what they call the definiteness of purpose.
Sure.
So what is your overarching goal in your life, whatever that is, and then you have to set attainable goals to get there. And it doesn't matter what plans you have to get there, because if you find out they're wrong, you can change them. And the reason I say that you have to think big, because I knew where I came from, where everybody thought small.
Yeah.
I came from a very blue-collar neighborhood. Everybody worked with their hands, or they were criminals. And when I said that I was going to move to Los Angeles and get a Comedy Central special and be a big-time comedian like George Carlin, everybody said I was an idiot, including my comedian friends. So I just know that, and the people I see succeeding are the people who thought they could. And it's that old saying, the guy who thinks he can and the guy who thinks he can't are both right.
Yeah.
So it's so, but you're also right that you
mix.
have to set attainable. You can't say I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to go, my goal in life is to do this, and then I'm going to start working towards it, and then things will manifest. But there's one more thing you talk about. You have to tell people you're going to do it. They did a study, and they found out that that's not always the best thing to tell people you're going to do it, because they found out that people who tell people what they're going to do more often than not, don't follow through with it. And the reason they say is because you get certain satisfaction out of just telling somebody what you're going to do. So it kind of calms your urgency to do it. So if you don't tell somebody you're going to do it, it keeps that burning in you and you actually do it.
And also you feel worse when you fail. That's the thing. When you fall off the wagon and everyone knows you've been on it, it's a much farther fall.
Yeah, I feel slightly different. I feel like I tell people what I'm going to do, and when I finally do it, especially if they didn't believe me, there's that great moment of, the Young Turks send their regards.